So, is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's good to see all of you guys here. Actually, it was just my excuse. I asked Kiran, how can I meet the most interesting people in Bangalore? Then he said, okay, let's do an event. And then I got you guys together. So I've been living in Southeast Asia for the last 15 years, Singapore, and also traveling in many of the countries around. And usually, these are not the places that, people will associate with, like, high technology. These are not known. Like, of course, Singapore people know is very well organized and so on. But when you look at places like Cambodia, nobody thinks of them as places that have very high technology or, people are doing interesting stuff. But as I spent more time with people in these countries, I realized that there are some things they do really well. And a lot of it is not purely technology, but how to use technology to bring the community together and to solve some problem in day-to-day life. So I'll just show you some pictures of some of the events and some of the initiatives in the region. And then after I show you the pictures, we can have a discussion or something. So right now I just want to make this thing become very dumb, but it doesn't. It just starts by itself. Okay, it doesn't matter. So I don't know if you can read this. This is a quote from Jimmy Wales. He just said this last week at an event in Africa. He was talking about like how the people in Africa are using mobile phones, and he said, it's very hard for things that are hard for us to imagine actually happen much faster than we realize. So my last 15 years in Southeast Asia was something like that. I was going to these countries every year, maybe multiple times a year, and sometimes I would think, hey, mobile internet in Cambodia will take 15 years. But next time I go there are 6 operators and they're giving like for $2 unlimited broadband and so on. So sometimes things happen just too fast. So the reason I got interested in this was in about 2006, I started working for an organization called Global Voices Online. So what Global Voices Online did was to look at how technologies change society. And we were looking at online forums, blogs, to see what people were talking about. Okay, and then I realized that I was in charge of a very interesting region, Southeast Asia, which has so many languages that people don't talk to each other. So my compatriot was in charge of South Asia, which is like all these India, Pakistan and all that. And I realized that even though India and Pakistan are not the best of friends, but they speak the same language. So online they could still interact. They would still like talk about similar issues. But in our case, Thailand and Cambodia, they don't have same language. So what do they talk about? So then we realized that, one thing that is common, which a lot of young people find common, is technology. Like they may not speak the same language, but they both agree that Android is better than iOS. So that is like or maybe the otherwise, I don't know. So at least that gave us an impetus of like we can bring people together by using technology. So just to show you some statistics, when I started my work, okay, you can't see this very well, but this is a comparison of Thailand, Vietnam and Cambodia, like how many internet connections they had in year 2007. So Vietnam is way up above. Vietnam has a lot of internet connectivity. It's the highest population among the 3 countries, about 80 million people. So they had about 15 million internet connections. Then you have Thailand, which is slightly less. And I had to even cheat to show Cambodia. I had to actually tweak this up just to show something, because the numbers are really, really very small. It's a much smaller country, 20 million people. Numbers are very small. But then I looked at how much people are writing online, like how many blog posts they are making online in English language, and this is what I got. Cambodians were actually writing more online in English compared to the Thai and Vietnamese. And it was very interesting, like they have such little number of computers. They are much poorer than the other 2 countries, but they are writing more blog posts, they are contributing more on forums. And it was very strange to me, like why is this happening? Why these 2 people are, even though they have more computers, why the numbers are less? And can you guess why? What might be the reason? It's like, why are Cambodians writing more in English compared to the other 2 countries? Well, of course, one thing is, Thai people are very strong in their own language. They do a lot of stuff in Thai. Vietnamese do a lot of stuff in Vietnamese. But for the Cambodians, there was no Cambodian keyboard. And there was no Khmer. The language is Khmer. There was no Khmer OS. So right from the beginning, they have to learn English. So basically, they don't write anything in Khmer. It's a bit like India, many of us don't write in our own native languages. Why would we? We would rather just start writing everything in English. So that was the one advantage they had. Because they started from zero, they did not have any basic. They were actually doing much better. They were connecting to the world outside compared to their neighbors. Okay. And then I met some interesting young people. So again, you can't see their faces very well. But I met them back in 2006. And it's two ladies and two guys. The youngest is this girl. She was 16 years old. And then the oldest was this guy who was at that time, I think, 21 years old. And what these people would do is, they would rent a bus, and then they would go to the provinces, and they would show people how to use Google. So they'll tell people, like, don't believe anything the politician says. You must learn how to Google. Check Wikipedia. Check the sources of Wikipedia before you do anything. And this is around the time when there was this border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia. They have a disputed temple. So, in Thailand, they will say all Cambodians are evil people, and Cambodia will say all Thai people are like baby-killing devils and all that. So these young people, they try to say like, don't listen to anything that people say, just do your own research and do that. And they would run workshops. They would go to the local universities in the provinces. They would run workshops for people, how to get online, how to use the internet, how to write a blog. And they used to call it Personal Information Technology Workshop. So I asked them, why did you make this name? They said, because nobody's going to bother blocking this. If you say blogging workshop, somebody may get scared and, try to block this. So they were smart enough to figure out, what would work. Having complicated name makes it easy for you to get venues and do things. So then that bunch of people, they organized an event called the Cambodian Blog Fest in 2007, 1 year later. And again, because they don't have computers, they don't have so much facilities, this is a session on how to make mashups. So they just printed cards of Flickr, YouTube, and RSS and all that, and they would try to figure it out and say okay, this is a mashup. It was very funny because I was at this event and somebody said, hey, we don't have projectors. So they would just SMS somebody else, and a little while later, 10 minutes later, two kids show up on a moped with a projector with the World Health Organization asset ID number, something. Cambodia has a lot of NGOs. So the kids are very let's do it. We don't have to worry about anything. You don't have projector, we'll get it. If we don't have internet, climb to the next building, pull a cable, connect the router, and you have internet. So in a way, they kind of thrive in that chaotic environment. Things are not well set, so they do their stuff. Okay. And then, let's say we can't bring the speaker. Okay, let's connect the speaker via Skype, and we'll face the computer to the audience, and you can ask their questions. So it's they don't see any limitation. They'll just do the things as it is. So the other interesting thing is, I just want to show you something else here. Okay, so this is the comparative GDP of these countries. And you can see that Singapore is the richest. Number 2 is Brunei, and then you have Malaysia, Thailand, and so on. And I don't have Myanmar and Laos in this list because it's again, it won't show up. The numbers are so small. So you can see these are the numbers, the big 3, Singapore, Brunei, and Malaysia. And 6 months back, a company in the US published a result, what percentage of internet usage is coming from iPad of these different countries. And here's the chart for that. Okay, percentage of web traffic coming from iPad. So again, number 1 and 2 are Singapore and Brunei. Okay, but number 3 is Cambodia. And again, it was very strange. Why is this happening? Why is not Thailand number 3 or Malaysia number 3? It's quite. Actually, if you're there, you'll find that it's very easy. Why? Because almost everywhere you have Wi-Fi password. You go into a cafe, they have Wi-Fi password stuck on the place. Before they give you the menu, they give you the Wi-Fi password. The internet access is very cheap. The kids, when they come to the big cities, the first thing they buy is a mobile phone or a fake Android, a fake iPad or something, because they know the importance of getting connected. And the second thing is they don't have baggage. They haven't got used to, let's just use Microsoft Office or Microsoft Word. They're able to do things, use things online. So there's no baggage before. They don't have to use existing older systems. The government systems are not running Java or something. So everything can be done on a tablet. So that's one of the reasons. They basically leapfrog the other countries. Thailand, you may still have to use something with IE. Otherwise it will not work. So that's one of the reasons I would say they're very good. So this is a in one of our events which we do, it's called a Barcamp, which I think you have a lot in India. It's like people just show up, they put up some topics and they start discussion. It's not scheduled. Only in the morning we know that who's going to talk and who's going to present. So this is a session on how to use iPad with your kids. And this room is full, and you can see that some people who couldn't come in, they're still outside. It kind of reminds me of like how, there's a legend about Bruce Lee that he was so poor that he couldn't study and he had to like hide outside. And so there is a lot of thirst for learning new things, which you can very clearly see over here. Okay, and people are very vocal. Like you will not find anybody very shy. You say we are going to have an event and somebody has to speak, so people will not like look at each other. They will just go and start posting topics. Because I guess the whole country is very young. The average age is still like 23 or 24 years. So people are willing to just go and talk and exchange ideas. And Cambodia, because it's inexpensive and we had so many interesting events, people from other countries started coming to Cambodia. So this is in 2009. We have people from about 6 or 7 different countries who started coming to Cambodia. And then seeing like, hey, how these people are doing these ad hoc events and peer learning events and like helping each other learn stuff and so on. So you can see like some people from Thailand, from Japan, and there's this guy from Myanmar. His name is Aga. So he came from Burma to see. He heard about Cambodia. He said that Cambodian people are doing this, and we have the same problem. Like we don't have good universities, we don't have good institutes to teach people programming or technical skill. So how can we do this? So he came to Cambodia to see how these people have done, and he went back to his country. And then like a few months later, let me show you that picture. Come all the way to the end. Okay, let me show it to you a little later. I'll just go to the next. This. Okay, so the other thing you see is also the young people are getting together, and this is a place called Small World. It's in Phnom Penh. So most of the people who are members here, they pay $10 each, and they have rented this bungalow. So they use this like a hackerspace. And then what you do is like, say if you want to learn something, you will come up here and then you will post it on the board. Or if you want to teach something, you'll post it on the board. Like I want to run some session, just post it over here. They also use this place as a co-working space. You can see people sitting on the floor and there's some tables here. So it's a very like a low-key co-working space. It doesn't look as posh as maybe the other hackerspaces, but it works. Okay, and then this is the board which they use. And then this is a session in progress. So the sessions can even be like, I'm doing a startup, I don't know how to do accounting. So somebody who has experience will come and show you how to do this. And this entire space is done by these young people, and they average around 19 to 25 years of age. So basically they are not like waiting for somebody else. They'll say like, okay, we have this problem, let's go and let's make our stuff and work with it. Okay, so this is another one of the girls I met recently at the event. She's 20 years old, and she found out that there are a lot of young writers in Cambodia, but because it's not a big market, they can't get their books published. They can't go to a publisher and get him to publish a book. So she found a company, and it's like a small, like an independent printing press, and people send her the stories. She has a team of editors. They will make the story look more professional, or edit it, and then they will publish the book. And this girl, the girl who runs it, is 20 years old. So, okay, and this is just in their hackerspace, they have areas outside. So I like the way they waterproof their plugs. Just use a cutout bottle and
the plug inside.
Yeah, you plug from outside.
Oh, it's open on the side.
It's open on the side. So just use bottle. So it's like these little hacks that they do is quite interesting. Yeah, so I wanted to show you Myanmar. Has anybody been to Myanmar? It's a good time to go. I think now we can get visa on arrival. Okay, and then the economy is booming. So, many people say like Myanmar is probably the least developed country in the region. I say no, it's the most advanced country. Why? Look at their plug. It's the world's most advanced power plug. It can accommodate any size. And again, the reason why they have it is because their computers are imported from China, from Malaysia, from Singapore. So they try to accommodate everyone. So this is the first Barcamp that they organized. The same guy, Aga, you saw in the picture there. So he came to Cambodia, he learned how to do this, he went back and he organized. And the very first year, in 2010, when we organized this event, this technology conference, they had 2,000 people. And last year, this year, 2012 earlier, we had 5,000 people. In 2013, which is in 3 weeks from now, we'll have again the Yangon Barcamp. We're expecting about 8,000 people.
When is the next one?
19th and 20th of January. So if you're free, just come by. And it's amazing. Like before this, our biggest event was Thailand. We get about 1,200 people. Or Cambodia, we get about 1,000 people. But we never really care about the number. It's more like let's get a campus, let people come in and let them talk about whatever they're interested in and let them learn from each other. But we were really surprised. And I was myself very scared because when I landed up there, first of all, 2010 they're still not free. It's like still the military rule and so on. So I thought if they see so many people, they'll arrest us. But then somebody told me, don't worry about it. This building belongs to the government. So it's like a state-run ISP, and the only ISP in Myanmar. And some people even postulated the reason why so many people showed up is because this is the only place in Myanmar where the internet is not blocked. So they came here to upload their YouTube and Flickr. So that's the only reason maybe they showed up. But it was still a very interesting event. You could see many people, in Myanmar they still wear traditional dress. A lot of people still wear a shirt and a lungi. It's very common. Very few people wear Western clothes. So they are wearing the traditional stuff and they're posting their topics. And for some reason, content management systems are the big deal in there. Everybody's working on a content management system. They're trying to build their own CMS and so on. So there's a lot of topics on CMS. They have a big Joomla user group, a big Drupal user group, for some reason. And so I was staying in a hotel, and then I went at night to go to the cyber cafe. And there was this guy who was there. Next morning when I went, he was still there. So I asked him, did you stay here the whole night? He said yes. And I'm downloading this Cisco router PDF file because the internet is very slow. He says, if I have this file, I'll be the only one in Yangon who has this, and I'll be the only one who can configure this router. So people are very, I'll be the first one to know this, and I'll be able to make some money out of it, and so on. And they had a lot of stickers for job posting. You can see web designer, senior PHP programmer. They posted in the Barcamp. So again, I thought who would be doing software development in Myanmar? But at that time, in 2010 itself, they had a lot of companies, and the number has just accelerated. So now a lot of companies there are getting work from Singapore or Malaysia. They're taking it back, they're doing it over there, and then they do this kind of offshoring. But I think another problem they had was the sanctions. So big companies cannot go there officially. I think the sanctions are still active. They're hoping it will disappear. Maybe next year it will disappear now that Obama has been there. So then you'll see bigger companies come. So Nokia phones are advertised not by Nokia but by the local reseller. So you'll never see a Nokia ad. You'll see the reseller's name, then the phones. And then we had people from the region. So this guy, his name is Norbert. He's a German guy living in Cambodia for 40 years or 35 years or something. And this is Chip. She's one of the, you can say the top known developer in Myanmar. She's very active in the Mozilla translation, Firefox translation in Burmese. So this was the first Barcamp in Myanmar, and these two people met, and then Norbert was talking to her about binary. And it's very interesting. Norbert's story is also interesting. So he was the guy who brought internet to Cambodia, and the way he did that was he bought a telephone line in Thailand, and he ran the cable across the border. And he got the first internet connection in Cambodia like that. This is in 1992 or 93. So, and then, you see, I'm trying to touch that. Okay. So I saw this little guy sitting in a corner doing something. So I was thinking maybe he's playing some game. And then a little while later, I see him making a presentation. And he was talking about how to make WordPress themes. And he's 11 years old. I am 40 years old. My students are not so attentive in class. I was really impressed by it. So it's very strange for me. I don't find in Singapore, young people just standing up and going up and talking about technology. And now they are very much into open source stuff. So they have a lot of support for they are waiting for this Firefox OS because then they can customize. They're tired of Android not having Burmese version. I don't think iOS will have Burmese in anytime soon. But they get very excited when they see open source stuff like this, because then they can very quickly modify and build their own things. Okay. So just talk a bit about Thailand. Thailand is another place where we have really fun barcamps or events. People fill up the actual boat, but then they start posting topics along the wall, in front of the toilet, and so on. And Thai people are very interesting. Like, they don't want to talk about technology all the time. So you even see a housewife saying, "I will teach you how to make Thai green curry," or some Thai musician who shows you like how to play guitar or something. And they actually welcome it. They say we should not just talk about technology. We should like welcome everybody here. And then, we were having a discussion earlier. I mean, if you've been in Thailand, you see that they adopt stuff really very fast. So QR codes were very popular in Japan. But rest of Asia, I never saw people using it. Suddenly I find like even the Thai local noodle store has a QR code. And then until last year they were the rage. Now it's already going down. So you can see like almost every ad, even the property has a QR code. So Thai people adopt stuff very quickly, like very faddish. They will go and like play with it and then like start using it. And you can see again a diversity of the topic that is there. So somebody's talking about Web 2.0 comics, somebody's talking about ERP, Java programming, learning languages online. And these lines that you see are votes. So when people put up their topic, the other participants go and vote for it. And once we have enough votes, like this one, we will allocate a room to it, this person. And we'll say, okay, at 12 to 12:30, you can have your session. And people who like to see this will go to that room and they will watch it. And the reason why we do this is because we have so many people turning up. We have like 1,200 people turning up. So how do you find like what topics are interesting? And usually the space we get from a local university. And then in Chiang Mai, up in northern Thailand, I found this person, and I thought maybe he came to the wrong place. This Buddhist monk, he was sitting in the Barcamp, and I started talking to him a little while later. Then he shows me his Twitter ID. He says he's actually a Buddhist monk, but he's very interested in meditation, and he came here to talk about. He did a workshop later on meditation techniques. And so this guy is again, Thailand. Another nice thing about Thailand is they have a lot of diversity. There's a lot of foreigners live in Thailand. So this guy, he's been living in Thailand for 10 years, teaching English, also trying to learn Thai. So he made an app which helps foreigners learn Thai. And he says it's very different from other apps which take you the traditional way. It starts off with how to fight with taxi drivers, like the most practical stuff that you need. The other nice thing about Thai people is that they say like if you're coming from other countries, I have a spare sofa, I have a spare carpet, and they put up a map and they show you like where exactly all the people, people from Bangkok who are opening their houses for you, where it is, and so on. So what we started doing is after a while, we started getting people moving to each other's country. And in Southeast Asia, it's not too expensive. You can either take a bus to go to the next country, or you can take like less than $100, usually less than $100 flight to fly between the regions. So we have a lot of people traveling between these events now. This is another one in Chiang Mai. I would say another interesting thing they did was they launched a spacecraft, a kind of like a homemade spacecraft, a balloon with an iPhone tied to it. It goes up to stratosphere, starts taking picture. But when this thing came down, it went down in one of the Thai military bases. And they thought it's a Cambodian spy doing this. Something. So with very difficulty, they were able to salvage it back, and then they showed all the pictures they had taken. So they try, and a little while later, Cambodians also did this, and they found it much easier to do because there was no Ministry of Civil Aviation to get permission from. In other countries, you have like a formal ministry where you go and get this. So in some ways, in some of these countries, because there are no set guidelines on what to do for certain things, they're able to get away with some things. Okay. And Thais are also very active to do regional events. This is an event called Mekong ICT Camp. I don't know if anybody has heard about this or attended this, but I would recommend, like, this happens every year, and this year it will happen in March, and they have scholarships for people to attend. So if you are interested in meeting many of these people, you can apply for this. And it's like a 5-day camp that happens in Thailand and goes through like a whole range of technology stuff, and bring people from all over the region together. So Thais are very active in doing these kind of things. They also have interesting spaces. So this is a a place called Open Dream. They have two of these, one in Bangkok, one in Chiang Mai. And again, it's like a co-working space where some people are already working on some projects, but they also have like a desk open for somebody who goes in and wants to work for a little while. And a fairly interesting environment over here. They always keep having parties in these spaces. Okay, plus a lot of meetups. So one thing also I would recommend is like if you're traveling to Thailand, just check up meetup.com and then just type in technology or design and you'll see some events happening. So this is from last week. And they're more than happy for people who are not even member to attend. So that's Thailand. The next one is Vietnam. One thing I find very interesting about Vietnam is like I used to go there once every 2 or 3 months, and I would take a picture of skyline and compare it to the one 3 months later, and it just keeps changing. It's like China, like say 4 or 5 years back. Things just change so quickly. Okay. And also almost like Wi-Fi everywhere. Any small cafe you sit, you will have a sign that says it has Wi-Fi. One of my favorite places to work is the city called Dalat. It's about 1,000 meters high. It's a 30 minutes flight from Ho Chi Minh City, the big city in the south. So once I come here, I sit in one of the cafes by the lake, and the entire half of the perimeter of the lake has Wi-Fi. So you can just sit there and do your work. And I make people in my office jealous by Skyping them and telling them and showing stuff. And they have like very nice guest houses. So this guest house where I was staying, with all the wooden stuff, costed me like $8 a night. And I can do my work from there. So that's the reason you don't find me in Singapore. Because why? As well be somewhere else. Okay. And then again, mobiles is crazy. Like every young person you meet him like 2 months later, has the latest version of the mobile phone. So about 2 years back, iPhone was very popular. You could see like iPhone everywhere in Vietnam. This is from late or mid 2010. And you can count like 1, 2, 3, 4 behind, and then the person sitting next to me also had iPhone. There was even a funny thing about like this street shops. This kid is playing on an iPhone. So because these kids play with iPhone, nobody wants to like go and kill the mosquitoes. They have this little racket to kill the mosquitoes. Like this is not interesting enough for them because they play the game on the iPhone. So we are thinking like how can we make this mosquito killer more interesting by adding an LCD to it and making it a game. Because kids don't want to do this game mode. They are more interested in their iPhone and Angry Birds. So it's crazy. But like you saw, Samsung is really very strong in both Cambodia and Vietnam. In fact, all over Southeast Asia. You can say like iOS is getting less and less, and Android is getting bigger and bigger. And it's not just Android; it's only Samsung. They're just so strong in this region. So again, Vietnam has a very young population, so you see them coming to these events. They were running a startup for a while. It was a very interesting idea. They realized that a lot of Vietnamese are buying consumer items, like they're buying cameras, they're buying DSLRs, or they're buying some gaming device, but they don't know how to use it, because once they buy it, the user manual is in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and some other language. It's not in Vietnamese. Also, nobody has time to read user manual. So they started a company called iHow.vn, where they started making videos of, they figured like what is the top 5 cameras, or what are the top 5 washing machines, and they started making videos like how to use those devices. But then what they did is, whatever the seed money they got, they spent it on a fancy office, and they didn't have money to make more videos. So that's the other thing you find, like, many young people are very excited to do companies, but then it's just an idea like, hey, I want to have a startup. It's like they don't have the, thing to like really go and then, I was talking to them, I said like, why do you make a fancy office? They said, if I don't make fancy office, nobody will work for me. So maybe it's true to a certain extent, like people don't want to work if they don't see a fancy office. This is a smaller town in Vietnam. So after we started doing these events in capital cities, we said let's go to small towns. So this is you can say like a tier 2 or a tier 3 city in Vietnam. It's called Can Tho City. Don't try to pronounce it. I can't. And this is a trend that you see. You see something interesting in this picture? Like, where are the men? There's like very few men. These guys are there by mistake. The projector failed, so they came to fix it. Okay, so this is a trend you see in many of the smaller cities in Vietnam because a lot of the young guys go to Ho Chi Minh City. They go to big cities. So in a smaller towns, it's only women, and that's why we love to do events here. Okay, my wife is not here, so I can know she's here. Okay. And again, you can see the topics they put up. So this girl was talking about some people say that man and woman should not stay together before marriage. So this is something that is happening in Vietnam a lot. Like people are going to big cities to work, then they end up like renting a house together just for the necessity. It's too expensive to rent a place. And then back home they have this problem like, hey, you're living with your boyfriend or girlfriend. So those issues that show up. The other nice thing I find in Vietnam is that they have a very good gender equality when it comes to technology jobs. In fact, a lot of their well-known developers are women, like these two girls. So they are almost like idols in that country, like for programming or for that particular area. So I find it interesting that, and they say the reason for that is because even early on, they did not have like men have to be programmer. I guess in a socialist country you don't have you just go to the university based on your quota and then you do it. So they say like they never had a situation where men were programmers and then the next batch of men only wanted to be programmers. So it's very well divided. Okay. So again, you can say like this is Navjot, one of our friends who lives in Singapore. He's from India. He used to work for Opera and ran a company in India. And then he moved to Singapore. So he came to Vietnam to do a presentation on user interface design. And people were very, very interested in that. So again, from Singapore going to Vietnam is again less than $100. You can get a return ticket to go there. And to stay there is like $8 to $10. So we find it very easy to travel. And if I was not coming here this week, I would be crashing this event. Keep girls dinner in Vietnam. And it says girls only, but I know the trick how to get in. So again, they have a lot of these meetups, small meetups in the region. So the next is from Malaysia, which is fairly affluent compared to the other countries. And you can see like in one room, maybe they're discussing about how to make a robot with Android. And in the next room, they're doing far more serious things like how to do face painting. So again, this is from Penang, another city in Malaysia. Somebody's talking about Harry Potter. And one problem in Malaysia again is a lot of people want to become rich with blogging. So you see a lot of these topics, how to make 100,000 Malaysian ringgits with a computer. So it's like some guy who's trying to sell like how to get rich by blogging thing. And this is again a session on special effects photography. So photography is very popular. Kind of creative arts is, I would say, much more popular than actual technology topics. Okay, and of course Malaysia is great with food. In fact, the only reason we go to Malaysian events is the food. Okay. So Singapore is another interesting place because again, we were talking earlier, the government in Singapore is very supportive. Like sometimes, I find that I don't have a venue for something. Once it happened to us, one of the agencies, like one of the museums, new upcoming museums in Singapore, they said, hey, we'll give you the city hall. Why don't you do your event in city hall? So we actually had a barcamp in the Singapore city hall. And the city hall also used to be the courthouse. So the speakers have to stand in the dock and present their ideas. So sometimes it's fairly easy to do stuff in Singapore, and also the awareness is good. Like I was in a radio show talking about these peer learning events, and the girl who was interviewing me, like the radio show host, she turned up the next day and she started talking about designing fonts. So it's a very well connected place. It's a small place. Everybody's on Facebook. If you meet a person in Singapore, you add them on your Facebook, you'll find 60 common friends because it's such a small place. So we are able to get like things organized very quickly and very easily. So I can do like 1,000 people event in Singapore at zero budget, because it's so well organized. But the events are not as much fun as what happened in Cambodia or Thailand, because you can't hide a bottle of beer and bring in the security cameras everywhere. But Thailand you can do like almost anything. So Singapore also has these spaces. So this is the hackerspace in Singapore, where we have like mini barcamps. So basically something like this. Anybody who's passing through Singapore, we will just keep like spying on people's whatever that they use, like TripIt or something, and seeing like if somebody's passing through Singapore, we'll just invite them, saying like, hey, why don't you come and do a little presentation? And we'll just announce it and people show up and interact. So we have a few spaces like this. The hackerspace, there's also another one called Hub. Okay, and then people from other areas, like say from the arts. So there was a girl who was studying in an art school. She contacted me. She said, we want to do an arts Barcamp, like totally dedicated to the arts. So they had something like this. And one of the topic they had is the art of classic barbering. Singapore used to have these old barbers who used to put a chair and you sit there and they shave. So somebody put up this topic, and I was very curious to see, what is this person going to talk about? The person had actually set up the chair and they were showing people how to do this. So a lot of nostalgic kind of stuff shows up. And we recently had our mini maker fair. So now there's a lot of interest in maker culture. People want to make their own stuff. I mean, I would say it's a kind of like a post-consumerist thing. People are crazy about brands, but now they say, hey, I want to make my own customized phone, or I want to make my own bag or something. So we had the maker fair. And again, this was sponsored by the Science Center. So it's very easy to get official support for these things. The last one I'll just mention is Indonesia. It's a crazy place. Has anyone been to Indonesia? No? Okay. Indonesia is I think it's a lot like India. Just that it's also islands. So you can say double the problem. Because the islands are far away or something. So they have very unique languages in each of the islands, very unique cultures and so on. But again, what sort of unites them is the social media usage. Until recently, they were number 3 on Facebook. I think only a few weeks before India took over and became number 3. And my Indonesian friends are angry. They are now getting their grannies to join Facebook. I said, we are going to have more grannies in India. Just give up. So they are really very crazy about we have to be number 1. They are very proud that they are the number 1 country on Twitter. The number of tweets per day from a single city. Jakarta is number 1. They do it so much. They always have their BlackBerry on them. You see, BlackBerry is hoping that because Indonesia is there, they will survive. Indonesians love their BlackBerry so much. So they have a lot of these social media festivals. This is an event called Pesta Blogger Festival. So again, you will see the word blogger a lot, but it doesn't mean that it's all people are talking about blogging. What they do is they associate themselves. If we are all programmers, we are technology bloggers. So my blog may have just one post, which is a PHP code. It's okay. I just start that blog to become a part of that group. So they are a mom blogger group. So they are all moms. They want to share their whatever experience being a mom or something. But they have a fairly large group. They become mom blogger group. So once in a year, they'll have this really big event in Jakarta where they bring all these people together. And again, they share their experiences. Okay, and then last year they started an event called On-Off, which means online and offline. So it's the first time they're trying to bridge the journalists and the new media people to bring them all in one place. Okay, and so many meetups. Everywhere you go to Jakarta, in Indonesia, any fairly big city, you'll find these people who are interested in technology or blogging or social media. They organize meetups, and a lot of time it's for a cause. It's to raise food for some disaster or donate blood or something. So there's a very high knowledge of how to help the society by using these things. Last one. And even the official agencies, I attended one of these events where they invited some of the travel bloggers from Indonesia, well-known travel bloggers, to come together. And there was the official from the Ministry of Tourism, and he was telling them, look, we have no idea how to put this information in English. So we hope that you guys, because you guys know your city, go and take pictures, write it in English, so that the tourists can find us on Google. Otherwise, they will not be able to find us. So they were trying to use social media to get this. Okay. But I would say, for me, the most important thing when I see everything that is happening in this region is people from different countries coming together. So these two girls, this girl is from Vietnam and this girl is from Cambodia. If you look at their history, Vietnamese always look down on Cambodia. It's I would say maybe India or Sri Lanka or India or Bangladesh or something. Just because we are bigger or we are slightly more developed, we have a tendency to look down upon other things. And it goes back in the family. Maybe these kids are younger, but their parents, it's much more stronger. You can see, whenever my Vietnamese friend says, I want to go to Cambodia, their mother will say like, hey, that country is full of black magicians and ghosts and bombs and so on. So it's like this generation that is getting together, and they are breaking that stereotype. Just because they're coming to these technology events or these social media events, they're talking to each other. And if you read their blogs, you can see it very clearly. Like they will actually say like, my whole opinion changed after I spent some time with them. And this particular girl, she's very interesting. I met her the first time in 2008 in Vietnam, and we met in a cafe. And she came to me and said, I want to travel the world. And at that time, she was 18 years old. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm thinking of dropping out of university. I said, no, go back home and study. Don't think about all this. After you finish your study, then you can do whatever you want. And thank God she didn't listen to me. She actually dropped out. She came to Malaysia. She worked in Malaysia for a few months. Then she came to India. She spent 8 months in India, just traveling across India. And then she went to Africa. She started from Egypt all the way down to Botswana. And now she's back in Vietnam, and she's a bestseller writer. She just wrote a book of like travel just like that. And in that book, I find my name. So I'm trying to find a Vietnamese translator. Maybe she's saying like, because of this evil guy. So that is I guess it's like not so much of people doing like startups or something like that. I think technology is helping these people to connect with the rest of the world and to basically like, understand the people in the next country better. Okay, so that's all the photos I wanted to show you. So if you have any ideas or if you wanted to share, like you guys have spent time in Thailand, isn't it? So you can share. Okay, while we are here. So if you ever plan to visit us, what I will do is I will show you some resources that we have put together. If you go to the Barcamp Singapore website, so we have a www.barcampsingapore.com, and then don't worry about Singapore, it's very boring because I'm the organizer. Okay, so Southeast Asian Barcamps and Travel Info. So if you go to this page, you will see the entire list of events that I have. So the immediate next one is we have Yangon, 19 to 20 January. The Cambodians are very well organized. They have the whole year's calendar here. And this particular one, Shanakpur, is great because it's going to happen at the beach. It's 8 weeks to And then we also have information on like everything, like where you get the hotels and what kind of plugs they use, what SIM cards to buy, what airlines, visas, So we have all of this here. So if you visit Southeast Asia, just take a look at this page. Just check out the events that are happening. Okay, and then the worst is you'll get a free t-shirt and free food. That's the reason I do this. You attended a Singapore Barcamp, yes, which was a much smaller one.
The one in May.
Yeah, in Singapore, events are...
Look at the picture. I was sitting right next to where you took the picture from.
Oh, okay. Okay, could you rescribe?
How about entrepreneur space in Singapore?
Well, it's quite a diverse range, So if you look at Singapore, everybody knows they have such a strong official support for these things. There's always like so many of this accelerator program. We were earlier talking about this. In fact, there is one which some friends of ours run. It's called JFDI. They just announced their next run. So if you're interested, if you have some idea, you can apply for that. So they try to bring in different groups of people into Singapore. You stay there for 6 months. You work on some ideas, and then they sort of demo you in front of the people. So these are the people who are very active. I know these people because they also help out in the Barcamp, but I'm sure there are others who do this. So these guys are very active. Malaysia, I've not seen anything ground up as such, at a smaller scale. It's bigger scale. If you want to set up a factory, things like that. And I think it's the same in Thailand and Vietnam and other regions. Now, again, we were talking earlier, Cambodia is interesting because let's say you have an idea, you want to do something. Like in my own case, I want to build a system where teachers can give polls immediately. Like, there are a lot of these vendors that sell you like some router-based solutions. So I want to build a purely software one. And I know that I need like 2 or 3 months working with maybe a Ruby on Rails programmer. So Cambodia is interesting for me because I know like 2 or 3 good Ruby on Rails programmer, and I need to pay them maybe about $500 a month to work for me to build this project. And in my own case, I just need to apply for a tourist visa and be there for like a month and then go to the next country, come back again. So in that way, it's interesting. But I don't think you can really like form a company and sell something to the local people because the market is not big enough yet.
I have a question around, you were talking about earlier how a lot of the countries are adopting or creating content in local languages.
Yes.
Cambodia being an outlier because of the keyboard.
Yeah.
Things like that. Now, are you seeing a larger population that is consuming also a lot of the content? Where you're seeing, let's say, the middle to bottom tier of the economic pyramid kind of now coming on board through mobile and consuming a lot
local
of
content. Yeah. So if you look at all the countries, like if you look at say Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, Indonesia, if you look at these big countries, like I'm not including Laos because Laos is very small. Nobody really knows where Laos is, and nobody really counts it. So it's really small. And Brunei also, because Brunei is also very small.
Are there Barcamps in Laos?
There was one, and then there was no more interest, so they shut it down. It's a very small place, so it's hard. So, just before this session, we were looking at online tutors, and we found that, Singapore is English speaking. Malaysia is also a former British colony, so you can say like it's an English speaking country. So, these two countries, in the top 10 internet properties, like what are the most visited internet properties, there's no local site at all. But when you look at Indonesia and Thailand, they have number 8 and number 9 local properties. And again, in the 10 to 20, there's a lot more local properties that show up. So like a lot of Thai people are interested in making like a Thai version of Android or Thai apps on Android store. In fact, if you look at the App Store across the region, Indonesia not so much because not many people are using smartphones here. But in the Thai App Store, in the top 20, you will find 5 or 6 local Thai apps. And one of their top app, number 5 app, is an ebook app. Is a local Thai ebook publisher who's publishing like a ebook.
You see this trend increasing
going forward. Vietnam also. It's growing. I would say in Cambodia it may not happen because it's a bit like India. People have already become comfortable with English. So basically anybody who owns a computer or doing something on the internet will know some English. So there's not much interest in doing local language. So it may change in the future. But I think Thailand, Indonesia and Vietnam is pretty much very strongly there. And these countries also consume a lot of local pop culture, like Thai horror movies. They're very popular. Indonesian bands are really big in their country. Unlike Singapore, you don't find like any Singapore band being the number 1 band in Singapore. So I think it's there. And we also have an Indonesian friend. She does exactly the same thing like the Cambodian girl. She runs like a online publishing kind of stuff, doing travel books and so on. So she published her own book, and now she's getting other writers to give her manuscripts so that she can publish their books. So yeah, I think Indonesia is. So many people are like. A few years back, there was this whole rush of investors going to Indonesia and trying to do something, but I think it's a bit too early.
Do you have any insights on, like you mentioned I forget his name, a chap who went back to Myanmar to start the thing over there? Yeah, so things like that, like if there's a place where where they're disconnected people but there's no thing yet. Do you have any insights on how these things got kick-started over there?
Well, I would say that is one of the reasons they were interested in Cambodia, because what the young people started doing 5-6 years back was, it was something very strange. Like they were not sort of incited by an NGO or something. Somehow the young people themselves felt that, hey, like it's so easy for these politicians to make a fool out of the people in the village. So let's go and do this. So I think like the Burmese are also interested in that model, like how the Cambodians were doing it. And I guess the Cambodians were successful in a way because, if you send like 2 or 3 cute-looking girls to a village, nobody will find anything suspicious. So that was their model. Like, take very young people, send them, and it was not very organized thing. It was just like people coming together and doing it. I think the problem is
in Myanmar, like the first one had so many people coming.
Yes, yeah.
So there must have been some kind of at least some kind of a community there. But
they had a Burmese Bloggers Association.
Oh, okay.
Which was like, basically any of these countries, whoever's online is a blogger.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a Burmese Bloggers Association who was like one of the kind of like organizing, and plus there were many different technology groups, like the people who were doing, working on Drupal or Joomla. So they contacted all the user groups and they said like, okay, we are going to have a big event, Barcamp, and then why don't all of you guys come together here? And then it was like a word of mouth. And also, because of the sanctions, big companies cannot do anything in Myanmar. So, like Microsoft cannot go to Myanmar and do like a Microsoft session on how to use Office or something. So there is a very strong user group, like people support each other. So when they see an event like this, people show up in huge numbers. I mean, a lot of them just show up because they're curious to see what's happening. A lot of people just show up for t-shirts, like me. Yeah, but you can see that. And then
the reason I asked is because I'm moving to another town where the tech culture is not so strong. I mean, I don't know about it that much. So I'm just seeing the lessons I can learn to actually experiment with or apply.
I would say, like, one thing is that don't worry so much about the numbers. Like, say, even if the first time you're able to get, like, say, 20 people, it's okay. Because the next time when you do it, those 20 people will connect with their friends. And yeah, so even in Singapore, when we first started the Barcamp back in 2007, the first one, I think we had only 30 people. And then the numbers slowly started increasing.
So was it mostly students? Or?
Yeah, student community. I would say 50% are students and 50% are... See, what sort of helps us is like, we know that now Android is big. In any of these countries, Android is big. So let's say we go to a third level city in Myanmar. There's a city called Tawanji in Shan State in Burma, which is where the next one we are trying to do. So what we will try to do is maybe run it as an Android camp first, and then have some design thing, and then have something else. So you look at like what is the most popular thing that people are really interested in, and then you run something on that. So like a bunch of people will come in. Out of that, you may find a subset that is interested in Photoshop or something else. And then you can get there.
How's the tech job market in these countries? And how easy or difficult is it to get?
Okay, like Vietnam is booming. I just got an email yesterday from somebody saying they're looking for people. So actually, I would say it's fairly good, but it depends on the individual country. Like in Thailand, it's a bit harder for foreigners to work. Like the whole work visa thing just takes a very long time. Singapore is easy based on how much salary you're getting. Like once you're getting more than $4,000, it becomes very easy to get a work permit or something. So, and then like in Myanmar, it's difficult. Like you. At this moment, it's not there yet. But I would say like in 2 or 3 years' time, they would need a lot of experienced project managers because they will have local coders, but they wouldn't have good project managers. In fact, I've seen like many Indians work in Vietnam, like in that level, project management level, or even like CTO level.
And is the local language an impediment or not knowing the local language?
I would say for technology company, it's not a problem because most of the people you will meet, most of the programmers you work with will speak English.
I would differ there.
Sorry?
I would differ there.
Okay, sure, please. Yeah.
So I used to work with Reuters in Bangkok.
Okay.
And they were mostly tech people, and probably I was one of the 10 people out of 1,500 who could speak English. Okay. The challenges there is these guys get into a meeting and the only common language is Thai, right? So either you're in or you're out. There's no midway. I mean, you cannot understand Thai even if you stand upside down. So, so it is an impediment if you ask me. I mean,
So they didn't know English or they wouldn't speak?
see, it's as good as in the South India. If you go to
Hyderabad.
not Hyderabad as much, but if you go to Chennai, probably. Even though people know English, it's a shyness and the lack of confidence in communication that they would not be comfortable communicating with it. These are all very good tech people. They are really good. They just can't communicate. That's about.
Yeah, like putting the idea in, like, okay, I can understand this.
This is hardly 2 years back, 3 years back.
Yeah, like like my experience is with young startups who are probably like more smaller team. And probably the people who join these companies are already like programmers who want to work with English speaking people. So I think you're right. Yeah.
I'm not sure how Cambodia is.
Cambodia is much better, because kids. See, what happens is a lot of the young people, because there are so many NGOs. Like some people even say the highest number of NGOs in the world is in Phnom Penh or something like that. So a lot of these people end up interning with the NGO. Like they'll spend 6 months working on some project. So not only do they speak good English, but they also have a sense of the world. Like if you're trying to explain to them, hey, this is what is happening in Afghanistan, they understand that. Versus like if you're trying to tell somebody in Vietnam, I'm generalizing here, but a lot of times they won't even know like what is Afghanistan or why do I care about something like that. Their education system is much more focused on just what you get. I mean, Cambodian education system is like that, but they have built these things outside of education system which helps them learn things. So like twice a year they have TEDx Phnom Penh, and then they started doing a local version of it called Khmer Talks. So they have somehow you can sense that they really want to learn more about the world. And then they want to explore or connect with the rest of the world. So that's the difference. But having said that, they are not as developed as Thailand or Vietnam. I mean, nobody's going to do like a 200 people software development shop in Cambodia as of yet. You will not be able to do it so easily.
Is it because of lack of resources or market?
I think, like say for any area, finding say 100 programmers who are working in that area will be hard. You can probably find 5 or 6 good ones, but at that scale, at this moment, it's a bit hard.
I mean, it's hard in dialogue.
But you have a different kind of difficulties, and it's not that not people. There are probably a lot more people and a lot more companies who are hiring people than.
Both are there.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Like say you'll get a developer, but he will not have an experience of like how do I scale it for maybe 1,000 hits per minute or something like that. So those kind of skills are.
Yeah, I mean that's of course a difficult talent to find.
Yeah, because there are not enough people who have that experience to tell them like, hey, how do you build something like this? You can.
Challenge is see, out of all the people that we showed in the Southeast Asian regions, these are all people from college who are trying to do something different, who are trying to create something new, and that's something that's not so great right now in India.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. There are people trying to do things, but it's probably they are the exception rather than the norm.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's something I find different in all these countries, that it's become a norm there that every other guy is trying to do something new.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's something we don't have.
Yeah, it's almost as if you feel that they have a chip on their shoulder, that we must improve. And a lot of times when I ask them, like I was talking to one girl, she helps put up a lot of these events, and she's just like, endless energy. Like she's in Indonesia one day. And one other very interesting thing I find about Cambodian people is like if 2 of them come to Singapore to visit, they will email me. They'll say like, hey, can you book hackerspace? We want to come and show what's happening in Cambodia. So they try to use like every possible opportunity they have. They're trying to sell the stuff happening back so that people come and visit them. And in that process they learn a bit more. So I was asking her like, what kind of drives you? Like, what do you get out of this? So she says, I mean, it's not even something very great. Like I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. It's like, aren't you supposed to be like this? And the funniest story I have is I used to have this. I work for a polytechnic in Singapore. I'm a teacher trainer by occupation. So I had a manager who's from Australia. He was about 50, maybe 55, 56 years old. And then he would see like by the end of the year, I would start taking no pay leaves. Then he asked me like, why are you going to Cambodia and all that? So I told him like, why don't you come once and see what happens? And now he's retired. Every 3 months he's there. It's just the energy of those people that is very infectious. You see the way so I showed you the timetable. Like we are struggling, even in Singapore, like even with the well-organized thing, people are just so lazy or jaded to organize on a set of things. But the Cambodians have the whole schedule for next year. They've even decided which part of the beach they will use for the next year, how to get the Wi-Fi to the beach. They figured that out. And they're going to make a session on how to get the Wi-Fi on the beach. Yeah. So, and one very interesting thing they do is they make you own the event. They tell you like, purposely they'll tell you like, we don't have routers or we don't have certain thing. So can you bring? And the thing is, when you bring as a participant, you bring your own router, you become owner of that event. Then if somebody says bad thing about that event, you will defend them. So they've figured out how to let you own something. So yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the one thing that I see very strong, especially in Cambodia and now increasingly in Myanmar. Yeah, because they feel that they've been left out for such a long time. And many Cambodians are also angry at the fact that every time you see a big NGO talk about Cambodia, they'll say like Khmer Rouge, poor country, half the people were killed. That's the history of the country. So they say like, we don't want to repeat that narrative again and again. We want to show like, hey, this can be a place which has technology or which has social media, all these things. So,
coffee and samosas.
yeah, please.
Thanks, Preetam.
Okay. Thanks for hosting. Yeah. Thank you.